Ben Patrick, thank you so much for making time to do this.
Thank you so much. Thanks for going through my workout with me.
The thing that stands out to me about you is you have what seems to be this immense care. Onyx is in the room right now.
My baby's in the room if you
hear your
hear
child
anything.
in the background. So people are lucky enough to have that grace their ears. You seem to have this really authentic care and appreciation for the people around you, and a deep, sincere inclination to want to be supportive and be helpful.
I appreciate that. I'm a lucky guy. Got an amazing wife and baby, and I didn't, going through all the knee stuff I went through, didn't have a lot of interest from the opposite sex, didn't have a lot of great times in high school, you know what I mean? So I didn't think I'd have much of a career and family and stuff like that. So why not be grateful as heck for it, you know?
So where was your mind at during that time frame? Because you've recently you're like a celebrity of sorts as of like the last 3 months.
Basically, yeah. Like we go out to eat, and people come up and they're like, "You saved my knees. I can squat again," because you know what I mean.
And you've been doing this correct. You've been doing this for much longer than 3 months, but suddenly knees over toes is kind of everywhere.
Yeah, I mean that's what social media can do. You know, social media, bad news or good news can travel fast. You know, so in my case, I have good news to share, helpful things to share. It's been able to travel fast.
Yeah.
But I definitely wasn't. I wasn't expecting this. I was relentlessly trying to help people, and so that has done well on social media.
What was and I don't mean to make this be like, tell me the dark times.
You can tell me anything. You can ask me anything.
But in those time frames where you were in your book, one of the things you mentioned in there is that there'd be some mornings where you'd wake up and question whether this is a crawl to the bathroom kind of morning. Where was your mindset at that time frame?
Man, I don't know exactly why I didn't give up, but no college scholarships out of high school, no recruitment at all, painting walls. Somehow, I guess somehow just deep down thinking maybe there's a solution out there. You know what I mean? So there's that bit of hope, and you just wake up and so I was studying. And she knows because she's been with me the whole time. And we'd meet early in the morning at the gym. Yep. And I'd be experimenting on my knees. And then again at night, experimenting on my knees. So clearly I still had hope. You know what I mean? I had hope even though I wasn't finding anything that was working. And then who knows when I would have given up. But somehow, boom, I found hope with this concept of getting better intentionally at knees over toes, which I was always told not to do. And then within a couple weeks, I've been pretty enthusiastic ever since because I knew like there's something that can be done here. You know what I mean? So I think that was it.
And before we started recording, we were talking about how I think it's easy to buy the idea that always playing things safe will ultimately lead to more safety. And in fact, an excessive amount of immediate safety, the concept or idea or illusion of safety, can actually lead to vulnerability and a lack of adaptability. And this is, you can take this metaphorically if you want, but also from the lens of like not allowing the knees to drift past the toes because you don't want to put stress on the knees and take away from that leverage from the hips. Like all the energy should go into the hips. Yeah. The knees aren't capable of any of this stuff. Protect the knees
until you land from a jump and blow out your knee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's true. Even elderly going down the stairs. It's no joke. One of the leading causes of death in elderly is walking down the stairs. Walking down the stairs is knees over toes. Jumping is knees over toes. Landing is knees over toes. So since I had been through so much suffering in years of avoiding knees over toes, once I saw that clue from Charles Poliquin, who's trained, I think it was like 286 Olympic medalists. Yep. So he was a craftsman. Once I saw that clue, I just knew instantly that was true. Now, since that point to now, well, what was the first thing we did? We got on the sled and we started very slow. And that's actually probably the safest kind of resistance training an older person can do, is to push and pull a sled, because it's not jumping them under a bar. There's no eccentric load. Even if there's 1,000 pounds on the sled, it just wouldn't move. So going from realizing that knees over toes is where we get into trouble, and then realizing, okay, I need ability in that position. So that's my keyword, is ability. You use the word adaptability. We're on the same wavelength, and you probably use a lot of other good words to describe it. Yeah. But quote unquote playing it safe, it's really, at the end of the day, it's just going to come down to how much ability do we have for the tasks we're trying to do? And then can we safely improve ability? And it turns out, yes, we can actually really safely improve ability. And I don't know about you, but I haven't seen anything that I would look at the human body and go, well, no, you don't want ability in the ankles. Oh no, you don't want ability in the foot. You don't want ability. No, you want ability everywhere.
Yeah. And what I really appreciate about your work is it highlights all the subtle like nooks and crannies of the body.
As does yours.
Yeah, both of us. Yeah. Yep. And I think that's by digging into those aspects, we find, like, an analogy that I've used before is work on the parts that people don't see. And then from there, you become undeniable.
Wow.
In a sense.
That's cool.
And a big part of that is by focusing on, like, the beach muscles.
Yep.
Thighs, anterior delts, forget about the posterior delts.
Yeah.
Pecs, abs.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, cool, this is pretty sick.
And it's what you see in the mirror.
It's what you see in the mirror. But by focusing on that posterior chain and focusing on some of those subtle components of the body that you don't see every day when you look in the mirror, suddenly, maybe at first, you probably will notice a difference. But with time, that starts to aggregate. And it's like, like there's something there. I can't explain it exactly.
Yep.
But that guy's got rockets in his knees, to use your language.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you want to have a six pack forever, start with your feet. Wait, what? Six pack forever, start with your feet? Well, right when we start pushing that sled, we're thinking about our feet. We're mobilizing, strengthening our feet. If you have weak feet, stiff ankles, and now you're getting pain through plantar fasciitis, Achilles, shins, knees, it kind of gets a lot harder to exert your body. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you can go exert your body and sprint and, exert at 100% and do these things, the rest of your life, it's almost like if you have the gift of being able to exercise without pain, you can sculpt whatever the heck you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'd love to go through your kind of like your mindset starting from the ground up.
Yep.
And one of the components that you're paying attention to in the book is particularly digging into starting to re-engage, I think would be the thing for most people, the big toe.
Yep.
So flexor hallucis longus.
Yeah.
Why?
If you imagine your body jumping off a building and having to land, first thing hitting the ground is your big toe. Then it's coming foot, ankle, shin, Achilles, knee, all this stuff. So it's a long-term approach of, okay, how old are you?
34.
All right, you're 34. If you want to still be having a high quality of life when you're 80, it actually is not that tedious to start training your big toe. Apologies for my baby in the background. This is a special edition.
This is a three-way podcast.
This is a special edition.
Alyssa's in the room as well, by the way. You're right.
So the stronger and more mobile that big toe, right there, it now gets a little easier not to have foot pain.
Yeah.
And now without foot pain, it gets a little easier to train your ankle, and gets a little easier to train your knee, and it gets a little easier to train your hip and your back and your shoulders. So it's not really even like some mythical or far-fetched approach, but maybe it's like a long-term approach.
Mm-hmm. And then going up, I mean, that whole sequence of events from the toe hinge, the toe being able to go back through its full range of motion, into ankle dorsiflexion, into hip extension, into then there's going to be this spiral pattern. You could call it the anterior oblique sling, if you want to be fancy, and connecting the obliques from each side across the abs into the anterior serratus, up into the shoulder. That's contralateral motion. But if there is a hiccup in any aspect of that chain, then the whole entire chain is limited by its weakest or most limited link.
Exactly. And we're often in pain and struggling with things, not realizing that we're not just special. We're not doomed to have that hip problem or that shoulder problem. And like you were saying, these things are connected down through. And when you don't have any weak or tight links, so that means your body can move freely and strongly. So if you can move, with freedom and strength on up the chain, you can do all the things you want to do. You can run and squat and press and, but I went through life thinking like, oh, well, yeah, can't do this, can't press overhead because of my shoulder. Can't do, you know what I mean? It's just like a system of can'ts.
Yeah.
But with all these weak links going down the chain.
Yeah. And then going up, because we were talking before you did Rogan's podcast just a few days ago, one of the things he mentioned in the podcast is he's had a neck thing going on.
I remember that. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you mentioned to me is like, oh, you don't do any kind of body work or any type of that stuff because you want to maintain the purity of your method, which I think is cool. I think that's great. And then, but within that, I think it is an interesting concept or idea that for me, I'm open to all the things, and I think we have different mindsets in that way, and that's great. But I think there's also value in being able to, you moved yourself into pain, you could say, or dysfunction, or your environment moved you into it, or however you say, but you moved yourself there. Yeah. Therefore, it would make sense that you could move yourself out of pain and dysfunction.
Boom.
Right? Is that kind of your perspective on it?
Yeah, because certain impacts occur. So if you kind of figure out the reverse of those impacts or what you were lacking or what was tight. So for him, you could theorize on it and figure it out, but if one side, it seemed like it was like one side of his neck or upper trap area, you know what I mean? So you're probably going to find things. I think that's yeah.
Or your rental car's popping off?
Definitely a special baby edition. I'm pretty sure our baby probably.
Oh, you pressed the thing? Oh, that's fine. We're organic.
I just saw him going nuts.
We're organic here in the Line Podcast.
We're going to keep crushing. I'm going to stay in the zone.
We keep rolling.
I'm going to stay in the zone. No, but I mean, if your spine and shoulders and hips were really functioning well, doesn't mean something couldn't happen, but you'd be a lot less likely to have a neck issue. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So there's still a ton.
Every step is a massage. Yeah. Every breath is a massage.
Yeah.
Massage is contraction and expansion of tissue through manual pressure.
Yep.
Every time you move, you're propagating manual pressure.
Yep.
So the difference of having a skilled therapist, manual therapist, physical therapist, osteo, chiro, whatever, or, just you being skilled with understanding how to inhabit yourself. The difference is that person probably has a lens on what's happening better than you do inside your own jar. Sometimes you can't read the ingredients when you're inside the jar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so that's the kind of push-pull interplay between seeking out outside help, outside eyes, or seeking out books, YouTube videos, silence, and accessing your own internal awareness of what the heck's going on. But ultimately, it's manual pressure in the form of somebody else or you just moving yourself to start to kind of find alignment.
Exactly. And
that was a long description. I apologize, but
no, it's really cool. And I would advise someone to go get a practitioner to work on it. So where I'm coming from, it's more like a position of responsibility that, okay, if I'm this trainer and there's these various problems going on in the body, I'm not going to go, well, there's nothing I can do about that and go see this person. It's more like I'm going to work on it every way I can through our exercise to have our body aligned right and stuff. And then also go see a specialist on that issue. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I do that, rather than saying, well, my workouts are going to leave you all misaligned and that's your fault and you should go see you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So rather than having that disconnect, it's like, if I'm thinking about every single movement and the quality of every movement, having no weak or tight links, then what I find is that's only going to enhance what the chiropractor or massage therapist can get on the client. You see what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it's cool that you're pursuing this like purist approach with it. I'm not mad at it.
That way in my body, I'm not getting any advantages. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You can see like the attention to detail on form for me. You know what I mean? So much attention to detail.
But a person needs to get to the point where they actually and that's what my whole intention with like my book, you know, or anything that I'm from a physical lens. I care about educating myself and others. What are the foundational principles that are consistent across all mediums, all movement practices?
Yeah.
No matter where you're at in the world, you know, man, woman, age, you know, whatever thing, like that part doesn't change. And that's one of the things that I think is really beautiful about movement in comparison to, say, nutrition, because nutrition's this way more blurrier conversation. People become very religious about it, and it's about their identity. There's consistent mechanical principles of like it's like physics within the body, that if you can tap into those fundamentals and understand them and be able to own them, then you can be a ballet dancer or a yogi or a weightlifter and be like, oh, I know what those principles are. Yep. Is that?
Love it.
What are those principles?
My most important, we were just talking about it when we left the gym. You and I went in there and we went on the sled and we went forward and we went backward. And when we left the gym, we saw a whole group of people and they were doing the sled. And
probably because of you.
Maybe.
Well, no, they do a lot of sled stuff in one.
But they were only going forward.
Yeah.
Right. And now I don't know their whole program or whatever, and it's not a criticism, but most of the world is going forward in some manner, and it's not going backward as much as forward in training.
Yeah.
And so just by taking that sled and going, how good can I get forward and how good can I get backward? And so you and I did it. We did 10 rounds, 10 meters each way, so 100 meters total each way. And we started slow, and then we gradually ramped up. But when I see people using a sled normally, it's kind of like done easily. It's not, it's just kind of like one piece of the pie and not backwards, usually just forwards. But we gradually turned that into 100% exertion in each direction.
Yeah.
What did that feel like?
I was collapsing. My legs were literally starting to, whether
were
it's
you
lactic acid or whatever you would have called muscle exhaustion.
Yeah.
No, I was not. There was a strong point of complete fatigue.
Yeah.
And it definitely exposed a weak spot for me.
Yeah. So if you think about pushing that sled forward and then going backward, and you think about the human body, so every step we're going through our feet. You're having to use almost everything in your lower body to go forward and backward.
Yep.
But you can exert really hard without that risk of like the impact of the weights hurting you, because only you are moving the sled. We move the sled forward, and even when we go backward, we move it backward.
Yep.
Whereas with the squat, we are stepping out of the rack, you know what I mean? And then we're saying, okay, we're going to be able to handle this weight on the way down.
Yep.
So I squat once a week, but I sled 6 days a week.
Yep.
So in terms of getting to those, like this exact topic that you were going on of like, what are the common denominators? Yep. To me, the common denominators is going from the ground up. Like, we just don't want to be weak from the ground up. There's no advantage to being weak from the ground up. We can always keep building upward, but there's no advantage to being, to having strong shoulders but weak hips, or strong hips but weak knees, or strong knees but weak ankles and feet. Right.
Yeah, I think it can even go the other direction, where you paint yourself into a corner of I don't know, like a limitation. Your strength can become a limitation if it's not distributed correctly.
Yeah.
And
totally.
Pavel, I'm sure you've heard this before because you're into a lot of these folks, but like Pavel Tsatsouline has a quote: "You can't shoot a cannon out of a canoe."
And Charles Poliquin used to say that.
Yeah, exactly. It's in the same realm.
And that kind of goes for different areas, even in the sense of like, if you had super weak external rotators and super weak upper back, but you were just training the pec, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you wonder why you're not able to throw a fastball faster, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So like you said, can't shoot a cannon out of a canoe. So yeah, for me, building from the ground up, building to be just as strong on the deceleration side, like how I train the tibialis and stuff, this tedious tibialis. Or the split squat we were doing was not straight up and down. That was diagonal. Like, we're purely training for deceleration when we're doing that split squat.
Yep.
So training from the ground up, having strong enough decelerators, almost like a bulletproofing reserve, having balance between sides, having no weak or tight links, these are fundamentals anyone would want to have, Yep.
So
that's my goal. Your goal is beautiful. My goal is a system that someone could do regardless of their sport, not to let the system become the sport. The way we're doing the split squat was not about how much weight we could do. It was almost like, how can we use that weight to pull ourselves deeper into positions to get stronger, but we were not going to sacrifice the form for more load on the bar. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So the whole, from the sled to the essential exercise I do to the toolbox exercises, everything is like, how does this enhance regardless of what someone's sport is? So that's my goal, is like a non-conflicting system that gives you more chance to jump higher, or more chance to run with your grandkids, or more chance to hit a new squat PR if that's what you're going for.
Yeah. How did you stumble across the concept of emphasizing anterior tibialis?
Variety of people, like you were saying, common denominators, right? So Charles Poliquin, my main early mentor on the knees over toes stuff, there was some examples of him training the tibialis with bodybuilders, actually, to help them potentiate their calf muscles. So he would pair the calf with tibialis. But then, and then my jump mentor, Kadur Ziani, you'd love this guy, French guy. He's 47 or 48, still dunking at 5'11". And he was arguably the highest jumper ever. You can see his videos on YouTube. And he trains his feet and ankles and tibialis and stuff so much. But in traditional college education, it's like, if you want to jump higher, you power up the glutes and hamstrings, because that's how you improve jumping in an 8-week study, right?
Yep.
A sports career is not an 8-week study. Just powering up your glute and hamstring and not training your tibialis, you're asking the universe for a knee injury. You're asking the universe for shin splints, because that would be more advantageous in an 8-week study.
It's like hitting the nitrous, like the NOS boost on the car.
Right.
You're like, okay, we need results fast. We got to hit this.
Exactly.
We want, we have a bias towards this study.
Right. But you have to be able to break and handle that as an athlete.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. And so if you always have a bulletproofing reserve, you can go out and apply that to jump higher. So I have plenty of fun ways I used to explain it to people, but probably my number one claim to fame is actually just how much I've changed my jumping, because it's something I can show people that's like, here's where it was. My coaches thought I would never, even grab the rim. And now I'm like throwing down all kinds of dunks in my 30s. But when people would ask me like, hey, do you have a program to jump higher? And how much jumping will I gain? And I'd be like, yeah, with my program, you'll gain like 2 inches of vertical per year. And they're like, oh, I think you had a typo. I think you said per year. You mean like 2 inches a week or a month, right? On vertical? Because that's all the programs are selling, gain 6 inches in 6 weeks. Really? So what about 52 inches in 52 weeks? Because no one can even jump that high, period. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So people want that result, but you can actually create a long-term framework to get there. But no college studies on things like jumping have I found useful, because they don't actually relate to the top jumpers in the world. They relate to 20, 18-year-old untrained males for 8 weeks, none of whom achieved great results. It's only just testing on 8 weeks. All the best in the world got there over a decade or more. What are those common denominators? So that's what led me to the tibialis. There are 0 studies on strengthening the tibialis.
And something that's become very, very popular in the last, few years or so maybe, would be booty gains.
Oh, yeah.
And just really, I know a lot of girls that literally like their workout program is the butt.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah. It's probably a corollary. It's probably a corollary though. And the girls I see sustaining that the longest have great lower backs and hamstrings too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in the effort to get only a butt and not hamstrings and lower back, I actually see people struggling to get results, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And in your program, you don't really emphasize a lot of like glute specific work.
I can break it down. Pushing the sled.
Yep.
Amazing for the glutes. Then our most essential leg exercise, the ass to grass split squat, lengthening the hip flexors. We probably all could have much more active glutes, but we probably all have stiffer hip flexors from a lifetime of sitting.
Yep.
And then a lifetime of squats and stuff, but not lengthening them out.
Why Why is that? I know that we talked about it before, but for the sake of this, what would that reason be? That really tight front hip flexors.
And we'll have some cool visuals of it.
Yeah.
But you can even imagine that as your leg trails behind you, the stiffer the hip flexor, you actually can't even contract your glute muscle. You can only use one muscle to the degree that the other side allows it to move. Like if you were trying to train your tricep and your bicep was like so tight it couldn't even move, you know what I mean? You wouldn't be able to train the opposite muscle. So it's the same thing with the glutes. So with the sled, you're getting a ton of volume on those glutes, getting circulation, and then with the split squat, you're opening up the antagonist muscles. And then every week we do things like back extensions where you're going up and not necessarily thinking about overarching the back. The coaching cue when you go up is to squeeze the glute, and rather than swinging on the back extension, to go up and hold that position at the top, and then to build that up one side at a time. So if you just take a set of back extensions and you go to the top, squeeze the glute, switch legs, squeeze the glute, go down on that leg, you can get a surprising glute workout, but again, with really minimal risk, super safe. Tons of older people have rehabbed their backs by improving on back extension type stuff.
Yep. You
can even start assisted. So that's my game, is regressive things where I can, like, how hard did we do the sled, you know? But it's my favorite tool for training older people, but we took it to 100%, tap out level.
Such a gratifying feeling to expose yourself to that on occasion.
Yeah. To use your body to the fullest, but without pain.
Or any risk for injury.
Exactly. So the sled is fundamentally the safest, and you can get good glutes with that. Then you start to open up the antagonist muscles to the glutes, and then start to actually target and be able to contract your glutes. And I think you get pretty good glutes. And then I do Romanian deadlift type loaded stretching so that the hamstrings aren't tight and inhibiting.
Yeah.
So to me, that's just a simple formula. But someone could add that. That's not an end all be all.
Yeah.
But that would enhance whatever someone's trying to do.
I find it interesting how the way a person moves oftentimes is indicative of the way a person lives their lives, thinks, perspectives on the world. Like a person that, and Ida Rolf, she has a quote. She's the founder of Rolfing. She has a quote that she said, the way a person walks through a room is the way that they walk through their life.
Wow.
And I feel like that would probably resonate with the way that you think about things. And I think it's interesting with you that I have two questions that'll probably be asked in two separate times. But one is the way that you move in your body is you're actively seeking out, one, weaknesses, two, these small nooks and crannies, seemingly invisible parts. Three, you have found this affinity to going backwards way more than almost anyone.
Yeah.
How does that relate to your personality, and why do you think? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, first off, that's a killer freaking question, because no one has related those things to me in terms of how it has to do with life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, if we took that, okay, going forward acceleration, that's sexy. Going backward, like going back to where you started, you know what I mean? It's like backward. But I've done more in the last 10 years. There's no way anyone's done more backward sled than I have.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's 100% how I live my life. I go do all the dirty work that no one's going to see. That then when it comes time to dunk, my knee doesn't hurt and I have bounce because of all that backward work. So I'm ready to shine because of all the prep work I do, because of all the, like, I really enjoy being in the trenches and doing the things that aren't flashy now, that I know it's gonna pay off, it's gonna pay off, even though it's not flashy right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I live. I mean, dude, I went the last year without a single cheat meal or any entertainment. No TV, movies, Netflix, sports, games. I turned down all those.
Entertainment's a relative term as well.
Very. That's a whole subject in its own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But really just cutting out like all the things that you would think to do to shut your mind off. That's kind of what I relate as entertainment, is something that I'm doing to shut my mind off. It's not getting me closer to my goals. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's a total difference. Is this increasing my knowledge and getting me closer to my goals, Or have I already watched every episode of Seinfeld and I just want to watch a few episodes? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure that show will do just fine if I skip episodes this year.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? I've already watched but I could shut my mind off with that and have some pizza, and I would feel good in that moment. But is that going to get me closer to my long-term goal? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the backward. I'm going backward so that I can go forward.
What would you say for yourself if you had to formulate some type of recipe to position your mind to be in that almost like, I don't know, like rapacious drive toward your goals?
Yeah.
That's something that I think many people, myself included sometimes, they lack that drive of like, okay, where am I going exactly?
I know.
What am I passionate about? And how do I get to that point where me getting from here to there is more important than pizza?
Yeah. I can give my recipe. It's not necessarily fair for everyone. For me, it's because of the shit I went through with my knees, right? So you saw from the moment we actually started getting into the workout, I started getting really passionate about it. Now I want you to imagine if you've had 7 knee surgeries and you just want to be able to play basketball with your kid, right? Just imagine that's you. You've had 7 knee surgeries. You want to play basketball with your kid. Now I'm sledding with you, and you're actually feeling your muscles work.
Right.
And you're actually able to do it.
It's like
and you're actually getting circulation.
It's like breadcrumbs.
And you're actually having a breakthrough. And then you text me on the weekend that you actually got to go play basketball with your kid. So that's why I'm saying it's not necessarily fair, because not everyone's going to have as much of a disaster story as me. You know what I mean? So, but I can't say, oh yeah, it's so easy to be motivated. No, it's not so easy to be motivated. I happen to have this shitty story that I found out it's actually really simple to help people. No, it's not a cure-all, but you could experience from doing it the simple concept of really mastering a sled gently. Someone could play basketball with their kid. You know what I mean? Like, you could have a functional life, you know? I was one of so many people who thought I wouldn't even have a functional life, you know?
Yeah.
So that's where my passion comes from, is because tomorrow and the next day and the next day, I'm still going to be, pushing for that. And I have my friends. This Sunday, I get to hoop with my friends. A bunch of them thought they would never play basketball again and had knee surgeries and stuff. And we became great friends through that. And now they're able to play and they're able to have that joy. And they say that I, changed their life or saved their life or whatever. So it's like, even for me, that's symbolic of what I'm doing every day.
Yeah.
So that's where the drive comes from. I wake up just like everyone else. And I happen to still have, I happen to still feel for that younger me, and I don't want other people to at least not have the knowledge. You know what I mean? So.
What about for folks that, I wonder what the formula for coming to a point of, when you're in pain, sometimes the whole world can seem dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,
angry.
Suicide. That's a thing. Like there's lots of people ending their lives right now.
Yeah.
There might be, statistically, there's a high probability that there's at least a good handful of people that are listening to this that are probably reflecting on it.
Sadly, that's true.
So for a person that's in that place where the world does seem very dark, how does a person come to a point where they are able to transform or alchemize that pain and darkness to actually come to a point that seems like you've arrived at, and realizing that pain actually in fact is and was their gift?
Yeah. Number one for me is find a sled. You'll get your circulation going. I'm telling you, you'll get a high. Imagine having not had a good workout in years.
Yeah, that's legit.
You'll get a high. You'll get circulation. You get those good hormones from a good workout.
Yeah.
But when you've had so many knee problems and you can't get a good workout, you can't get those hormones going. But that's what I'm here sharing. I'm one person. I'm on a basketball team with Aaron, and I play a totally different position, and that's what makes us a great team. You see what I mean? So as unfortunate of an answer as you may have been to hear sled again, but
I'm not mad at it. And
right.
sled also, I would take that as probably a metaphor, even though you meant it literally. I'd be like, well, like, what is your sled? Literally get a sled because you need to move, you need to exercise, exactly. You need to feel strong, healthy, supported, stable.
Yeah. I was very depressed. So,
how depressed? What did that look like? Feel like?
I mean, for me, painkiller addiction.
Oh wow.
Icing my knees 4 times a day to get through the day wasn't fun. I remember telling my wife I thought I would never be happy. I literally thought I would never be happy.
Wow.
So we're all on some spectrum of happiness or not. You know what I mean? And we go through different moments even in a given day. So you were saying darkness. Yeah, my general was not too good, Where would that have gone? You know what I mean? So that's why I'm passionate about the sled. But there's you probably have your own sled. You see what I mean? Of answering that same question for someone. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Of helping them get out of that dark place. And I think for me, it was relentlessly seeking knowledge, it's not just that I found a sled. It's that I found that Charles Poliquin was using backward sled to help people. You have an Olympian who's trained their whole life for an event, and now they have a knee injury months before the Olympic Games, and Poliquin was the one who could get them back and able to compete and win a medal. You see what I mean? That changes that person's whole life. I'm sorry, if you train for the Olympics your whole life, and then you don't make it because of an injury months before, you know what I mean? So Poliquin was using that. Poliquin learned that from Louis Simmons. Louis Simmons was a powerlifting coach who became obsessed with using the sled. He learned that from Finnish powerlifters who were dragging trees backward in the forestry industry. So people are often asking me, oh, how do you know all that stuff? Like, I just relentlessly seek knowledge. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's probably the common denominator I could tell someone is whatever you're going through. You know what I mean? Someone probably has those tools you need for your own breakthrough.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Right. And you might have to just keep relentlessly seeking knowledge. Meaning it was only a matter of time. You see what I mean? So with that mindset of relentlessly seeking knowledge, even though I was depressed, it was only a matter of time before I was going to find some answers.
What was this might not be the right way to ask the question, but like the texture, flavor, sensation, experience of your subjective depression?
Oh, man. I don't even know. It's like I grew up worshiping basketball with no plan B. So it's kind of like, it was just kind of like a giant stop on the life I wanted to have. You know what I mean? Even if it just meant being able to play with my friends, being able to coach my kid actively, stuff like that. So, for me, it was things were duller, lost that spark for life. You know what I mean? That's the best I can do.
Yeah. Crazy, man. And then going up, back up through the change. I want to do like a full journey through the body.
Yeah.
How does this? So some of the emphases, if that's how you say the plural form of emphasis, would be focusing on reintegrating the big toe, and that's kind of an interesting thing as well. Of like a lot of what we've learned for a while, there was a concept that like flat feet. That was like that was like you have like some type of disease or something. And so people instead would roll out and put all the pressure on the outside, like the pinky side of the foot, into that lateral arch.
Yeah.
And then you want to have your knees kind of bowed out so you can get torque in the hips and create the and then suddenly you're walking this way that perhaps some people might have left the actual opportunity to really be able to engage that big toe into the ground.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting thing how certain concepts, they get spread around, they get popularized, and then it's almost like a virus.
Yeah.
Into the kinesiology of culture.
Yeah. And it makes things more complicated.
Yeah.
So I kind of look at data through that lens. Is this giving me answers more simply or more complicated? And my personal strategy is like, if such and such is going to make things more complicated, it's probably going farther away from truth,
Totally.
So I remember being prescribed, for my knees, different shoe insoles and, like all this stuff which really all these, Band-Aid things were distracting me from trying to gain ability in a natural way, So I think that's why the sled is probably a good metaphor as well. It's just like move your body forward, move it backward, gradually add resistance to that. Forward and backward, and you start to work shit out.
Are there any other popular myths around the body that you notice in popular culture?
I just see a lot of limiting motion, and you said it, and so I'll let you kind of say what you said about the degradation, decay, but basically from, don't lay your knees over your toes to only have a neutral spine to don't press overhead. There's plenty of things that we're just told don't. And if you actually look at the physiology of what's going on, the more don'ts you have to a natural human motion, you shut off circulation and strength there, and even the synovial fluid that takes, the nutrients to the joints. So I would say rather than thinking don't, think how can I safely build this, Yeah. But I would say almost any don't, I would say that's the red flag.
Spinal mechanics and the don'ts of spinal mechanics.
I'm told don't on most of the stuff I do with the spine, but
Sure.
I believe in if you thought about what can you do with your spine, right? And if you just stood there, what could you do with it? Okay, there you go. That's that's a pretty that would do pretty well as a back program, in my opinion, versus saying don't. So I go on the back extension sideways.
Yeah,
that thing's amazing for the quadratus lumborum. I go on the back extension forwards.
Yeah.
So that I round, I extend, you know what I mean? So I think that would be whatever you can do with your spine.
Yeah. What do you think about maintaining a global curve through the spine compared to a local curve? So, for example, that'd be a person's in forward head posture and their cervical spine is like crooked forward, and then they might, have these wild high amplitude curves.
Yeah.
That are going all over the place, compared to someone that might be doing some complete total global flexion of the spine compared to a global extension or global side bending. So global being going through the whole spine, and local being just one specific place, like putting a kink in the spine.
Yeah. We all kind of start out somewhere.
Yeah.
And where my system is right now, I'm trying to get the hips into a position for the spine to even have a chance. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And trying to have the spine strong, trying to have strong muscles all along the spine, trying to have flexible and strong quadratus lumborum muscles, the muscles on either side. Trying to be able to have good reach overhead, full range of motion overhead.
Yeah.
But then it would go more into a specialist further up.
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about would be an example of where of why I think that someone trying to work on different things would then go to a specialist in different areas.
Yeah, I think what you do a really good job at is maintaining integrity through these seemingly dangerous, in quotations, positions, and that's the thing, is a person getting into kind of the FRC type world. They've that culture has a strong opinion about being excessively passively mobile. Where you're really flexible, but you don't actually have any strength from those ranges of flexibility.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you do a really good job at. And that's something that you were, harping on when we were in the knees over toes lunge.
Yeah.
Is you're not just allowing your ribs to flare open, or allowing you to dump your spine, your lumbar spine forward and bouncing out of that bottom position and resting there. It's highly active through that full range of motion. So through the whole entire range, you have integrity. You could bear weight.
Yeah.
Compared to just putting yourself in these wily, strange, stretchy positions. That's I think the disconnect between flexibility and actually just maintaining integrity through flexibility. Really good for the body.
Yeah.
Wily, instability. That's, I think, when perhaps there's a conversation around maybe that position's kind of dangerous, because, to use FRC language, you don't own the position.
I think there's a ton of truth in that. And I think it's the more range of strength we have, then our body in life and sport can go in different places and be protected. And I think even with the tissues and stuff, I think when you
Onyx is opening the door right now.
Onyx is playing.
It's very special.
I think even with the tissues over time, pec tissue getting closer to the shoulder, hamstring tissue getting closer to that, like, where it ties in up in the glutes, hip flexor tissue, groin tissue, like areas where we might be prone to like tweaks, tweak. I think when over time as part of your program, when you're strength training through your range of motion. So I think that is causing effects that haven't been explored enough to actually lengthen areas, give, it's a harder thing to measure muscle length, but there was some work done on this in the hamstring. And like what it showed is 4 times less chance of hamstring injury of people who had greater hamstring length from being stronger through stretch. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like pretty wild. So I think there's kind of an exponential protection effect if you're both strong and flexible in an area rather than only flexible in an area or only strong but not able to go through range of motion in an area. Yep. I think it's that combination if you want protection.
Yeah, that's like the Bruce, and we'll wrap this up, but that's like the Bruce Lee quote. I have it. There's a chapter in my book called Rigidity Tends to Break, or it's about play. And the quote, I should just pull it out of there, but it's something along the lines of, the bamboo trees don't break when wind comes. Like the supplest tree doesn't break.
Yeah.
Whereas when a stiff, rigid, super strong, stable, but it doesn't have the capacity to go through a full range of motion tree, it's stable, snap.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think that's like the microcosm of, current pro sports. Stable, snap.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing injury rates just like skyrocketing over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
The more don'ts enter the equation, So, it doesn't mean it's not going to be a zero of injuries. That's the thing about team sports, that wild, variability. But I've worked with so many of these guys, and so many of them lack. It's the illusion is that, well, they're super strong. What you don't see is when you actually measure them on their strength in certain areas, and you find out they're incredibly weak. So now they have one part of their body is capable of a ton of force, and another part of their body is actually weaker than like an average person. And it's like they're built to break. Do you see what I mean? They're built to be strong and explode, but then break down. And actually, when you fill the gaps, when you make them able to be flexible in addition to strong, then they actually get even stronger and run even faster too, because now they're not having all the breakdowns. So once someone gets to a certain point, usually it's the breakdowns and the injuries that prevent them from getting even faster, even stronger. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Amazing, man.
Yep.
We definitely are going to do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many more times.
Many more times.
Oh man, we had a great time.
Yeah.
You're totally like, waking up my mind. Super smart questions that no one's even asked me on podcast before. Cool. So, I feel like, wow, I have a lot of thinking to do. We'll regroup for a round.
Yeah, we'll recollect.
Exactly. Right. You're like, you got my mind going now. So,
so I emphatically recommend people getting your program and your book. And what I really like I've told you, I've read your book twice.
Wow.
Which it's a short read. I mean, you can literally read the whole thing in one sitting. I mean, if you have a short flight, like you could get the whole thing, absorb it, and then integrate it upon arrival, which I think is really important. I think that's really the one of the primary keys to your success is the fact that you have been able to, and even messaging you, I think we were texting, you're saying about, I told you I got your program, and your message was something along the lines of like get this one, or great that you got that one because it's even simpler.
Yeah.
And like that's your mantra, it seems.
That's my role in the game.
That's your role in the game.
Closer
and that
you
is
get to the truth, the simpler it
gets.
gets.
It's such an incredible lesson.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So yeah, where can people go to get the book, get the program, do all the things?
I put them on Amazon just to make it quick and easy to get.
Yeah.
I have Kneeability Zero, which was essentially my COVID work, meaning gyms were shut down. Okay, now people can't go use the sleds at the gyms. How do you still rebuild from the ground up? So 0 is pretty cool that people have something they can go do. They can just open up the book and they can start. And then I have a second book called ATG for Life, which actually goes over the basics of how to use a sled and my concepts on adding resistance and equipment. How would you add resistance and equipment?
Yep.
And then the only other, I made the 2 simplest books I could. And then my program is actually online, is also as simple as I can make it, because what I do is I put my own workouts up each week in real time. So like what I'm about to do this week, anyone can do online. And even I resort right to the app and look at it to see what I'm, to remember exactly what I'm doing each day.
Right.
So it's like, I have a gym in Florida. I coach my friends and family and my staff and myself, and I make that so anyone can see exactly what we're doing, for cheap online with an app with feedback. So that's it. That's everything I have to offer.
Great. Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate this. People listening to this, if you want to see Ben, Patrick, and myself, and Alyssa,
we had a great time,
and Onyx in action at the gym, we're gonna have a YouTube video for this, and we'll have some Instagram content that'll go up. So all that stuff will go out. And thank you all so much for tuning in.
Thank you. You're amazing. I pulled up. This guy was resting in like a deep squat, just beautifully. He's taller than me, a supple leopard, as Kelly Starrett would call it. Strong, shredded. So he lives it. I think that's the most important thing. So you're crushing it. I appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Mutual respect. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. Over now.